Hello there, and welcome to the value of everything. So, I am going to look into the Bitcoin ecosystem a little bit further here. I would like to explore speculation and how that can be of value to the markets. We will also look into an energy coin, which I think has been developed quite recently. And also, we're still looking at market components, things that I've mentioned before, like anti-monopoly, innovation or value coin, and cooperative coin, and seeing how they can work in conjunction to loans. And I'm going to try and develop a new idea called trust coin as well on top of it. So a few more theories, and I'm just trying to combine them all together and see how they work as this big ecosystem. Now, as we start, I would just like to approach the Bitcoin ecosystem ideas as giving another analogy. So if you could think of how incredibly advanced the tech industry has been over the years, imagine how that would be applied to governance. So imagine if you had, like Google as in charge of our governance, or you had Steve Jobs as the leader of a country. Is sort of applying that. Obviously, you don't really want power. These are all decentralized schemes, but that is an incredible thing to envisage, that you would have this massive turnover of ability and skills and ideas that were being pushed forth into the realm of governance, which really is a bit static over the years. The way that we vote is still on paper in a ballot box, so it's really way back in time in comparison to how the tech industry works. So imagining unlocking all the power of all the minds that could work onto that is if you could envisage when the Apple Store opened and all of these new producers could work inside the framework of Apple to create all these beautiful new apps. It did really launch them much further and give life to the iPhone. Now, another thing, a little concept or analogy that you could apply to this as well is that imagine how with Bitcoin, the advancements of graphics cards, especially into ASIC hash rate graphics cards, imagine that improvement being applied to the forms of governance that we live into our day-to-day lives. So if you could think of how quickly people have rushed out to improve their computers, to improve the hash rate of churning over all of these number combinations to get a Bitcoin, imagine if you had a measurement system in place which was encrypted and didn't have too much of an ability for human manipulation. Then people would be rushing out to do those very good virtuous things like I guess one of the examples that I used beforehand was light pollution coin. So to prevent any light which was going out into the space, we would direct all the lights downwards. Then the satellites would pick up any light coming from cities and notice the difference and award the miners who were creating the most improved differences. So that's just one example for you there. But then once you start to think of how many different ideas that you can apply to this theory in terms of a measurement which cannot be manipulated by humans, or at least has a counterbalance measure which prevents humans from manipulating it, then you do have this ecosystem which can be created where people are pushing themselves to improve the world. Now, sorry, a bit of a mouthful there, better take a breather. So, Bitcoin speculation. Now, speculation has got a bit of a bad reputation. It is really, in today's age, we consider ourselves like the stock market speculators and the housing bubble and all means of speculation, and really just this very strange allocation of resources which has gone into this industry, which doesn't really have any productive measure to it. It's not like where we buy more expensive cars or more expensive houses or more expensive investment products. It actually improves the economy. It really just creates this arm of more debt leveraging, and it really doesn't do anything for the productive means of the economy. However, there is another area of speculation which is the most important, the most valid. If you think of Russia, where they try to create a communist system where they would try and work out the marketplace and the seasonal changes, centrally plan how all the fruits and vegetables and meats would all be distributed throughout the world, or throughout their country, in fact, then you find that there's massive queues. They cannot really control the market system. Really, it needs to be decentralized to create the best good for everybody else. So that's really a case of speculation. So speculation is a lot of people just trying to work out what is going on really beyond the balance sheet. So a lot of businesses report balance sheets, statements, and some of it can be even incorrect. So they're trying to even work out beyond what's going on the balance sheet. And also they're looking at things that are coming out externally. So they're looking at seasonal changes again, and what is the word on the street, what people are thinking. So they're always looking at the next step ahead, which isn't so much of a bad thing, especially if they can really put investment into areas which they can see that humans will have demand in the future. So these are just like little bits of things which are bad and are good of speculation, but you can see it's not quite as clear-cut as what people think it is with speculation. One of the most important factors to think of when there is speculation is that there is a massive, ginormous government involvement in terms of speculation. Really, a majority of all the investment products, everything out there, really is all looking at the government. You're looking at the FX market, if you're looking at the interest rate market, if you're looking at commodities, there is humongous amounts of government involvement. Say, for example, China wants to change their interest rate policy. That will have a direct consequence on the price of copper and iron. So you do have to really factor in a collusion point, which is the government, into the economy. And obviously, I guess government workers can't really speculate on the markets when they put forward policy. However, there's probably people in back corridors and stuff like that, which are potentially, you cannot really ever dismiss that there is any kind of manipulation which might be going on in the background. Therefore, speculation has become a little bit of a problematic thing, and it potentially does, in certain economies, does remove resources from people, because if the government is really trying to distort marketplaces and put pockets into people of power, put money into pockets of people of power, then really we do have a very strange environment, and we do create the 1% and not really a government which is for the people. So, so one thing that also happens with speculation is that, obviously, I just mentioned beforehand, there is a massive investment in non-productive economies. Now, this is an incredibly disastrous thing, because we are really, not only if you could think of the costs of putting all this allocated resources into massive debt products and a housing boom, which really doesn't need to exist in the first place, but you are also losing the cost of people's minds. Very, very intelligent people are in banks, they are in hedge funds. They really are potentially the people that are going to invent the new car, the new computer. And really, because they are the marketplace is providing the best wages in these massive companies, we have lost those means of production, and you can never quite really contemplate how much that has been disastrous for the economy. If you could think of, I watched a documentary about the quants and how they were employing people. You had like amazing scientists, mathematicians, which are all really jumping into the financial arms of major corporations. But really, imagine if they were still on the marketplace inventing things. We do not quite, or we can never really quite contemplate how much non-productive speculation has inhibited our progression. And one obvious thing with speculation is it does create boom and bust cycles. So especially where we have high frequency trading, algorithmic trading, and leveraging, which creates these massively volatile markets, booms and bust cycles. The government is really there to counteract this factor, but it does happen, and the speculative booms by this amazing amount of capital which is provided for to do all this speculation is incredibly destructive. If you had stabilized markets, people could really work in their day-to-day lives without finding that tomorrow that their products that they're producing is worth nothing, but then all of a sudden you're wiped out and somebody can really produce the same products as you tomorrow, and there's a market recreated for it. So it is a destructive snake on society sometimes, particularly if it is focused on the non-productive economy and you're getting these massive chunks of money which is being thrown into the system, and it really just bites itself in the arse. Now, one great thing of speculation, I just mentioned before, speculation is a fantastic thing to allocate resources, far better than a centrally planned government. But also, one of the great fantastic things about speculation is it does take the risk for poor assessment. So if I'm an speculative company who is buying fruit and vegetables to resell to the marketplace, if I have made a poor assessment that everybody really wants bananas tomorrow and nobody really wants bananas, then my business is wiped out and nothing really happens. Obviously, I have some personal problems on my side, but really the economy at large doesn't really get affected too much. Maybe there's some kind of debt write-offs that happen, but it really isn't a humongous effect on society, particularly if you put this on a larger scale, that a government makes this policy and everybody is involved in this now that we have this massive influx of bananas, and really all it does is it just hits the taxpayers. So whenever there is a poor assessment made, so say for example quantitative easing or something like that, then the taxpayers get a massive hit, and really nothing else. It isn't just like an individual arm, it isn't an individual company that gets affected, it is everybody that gets affected by one person's poor assessment. Really, the sovereign responsibility owes within one person or one ownership of a company rather than just for the masses. And really, when you think of things in the cooperative world, there is more so a situation of profit taking when times are good and taxpayers have to forfeit any problems. So speculative situations can be very destructive. Let's just go back into the theoretical side of things. So now, if you think in terms of speculation, how important things would be in a blockchain environment. So currently in today's age, if a meteorite was going towards the planet and the scientists have worked that one out, then you would have the scientific community coming out and then you would send information out to the governments. But the governments really would have to use other bigger arms like the UN and things like that before they could orchestrate some kind of a plan to take the meteorite off course. Now, that would be quite time consuming, and really it's probably just it might be just actually too much of a delay for us to even solve the problem itself. Now imagine if you had miners or speculators, I've mentioned before survival coin, which are trying to detect anything that is a danger to human society. Once that would happen, there would be speculation in the market already. So the survival coin would go into a ballistic state, or a rampant exponential rise of value. And the miners there, who would be currently just mining over just the anybody who's creating good survival processes like improving waters and stuff like that, would suddenly realize that there is incredible value for being a miner inside the survival coin. So then more people would start to jump into the actual coin itself, and before even the news would come out anyway, and then there will be a detection that there is a meteorite coming towards us. At that point, I would imagine that there's a humongous payoff in survival coin to knock out the meteorite, and potentially there is rewards for doing that in collaboration. So all of a sudden there would be survival coins being purchased for, say, nuclear weapons or things like that, which could take the meteorite off course. So if you could think, this speculation network is like a homogeneous ecosystem whereby as soon as some kind of thing that is happening to human society is, say, if it's at peril or anything like that, then the speculative session of market economies would just say, right, okay, we need to allocate a shitload of coin into, we need to start purchasing on the exchange system, say, Bitcoin for Meteorite coin, or survival coin, and then all of a sudden the miners would go, oh my god, we need to really start working with the survival coin, and potentially if you are actually getting, if you have stored loads of survival coins yourself, you would notice that all of a sudden your net wealth would increase rapidly, so that you would have the resources to research and find different discoveries to blow up the meteorite itself. On the side, I've mentioned before innovation coin. So innovation coin would put a lot of effort and focus into putting designs and ideas into that realm as well, which could be downloaded for free at the same time. So there would be a tremendous collaboration and an effort to blow up the meteorites. Probably it would be so blown up before you'd even know it, before it even comes into our inner solar system. So you can imagine the speed and the ferocity of speculation working to help humanity. Now, if you compare that to the government, there could be this big argument as who's going to spend all this money as to blow up the meteorite. There could be debates. There could be, well, you can't use our airspace, you can't do this, and there's too many negotiations. There's probably favors for favors, and then it all turns into a giant mess. Before you know it, the meteorite's already hit us. So just imagine that in comparison, how speculation can be channeled. Some evils can be used for good, as with the blockchain does work in the realms of scarcity. All these coins are distributed in a scarce measure, so that there is some perceived value because of the scarcity of it. You do have to fight evil with evil in some respects, and speculation is an incredible good to society for its allocation of resources. There are some ills, but I will try and go over how we can sort of combat that. Now, next up, energy coin. So I think this one I've definitely heard of before, but if you had an energy coin network where miners were mining for energy and providing it into the network, and you had a distributed power system in which you could put and upload back into the network, then it would be a fantastic situation. You would have plenty of energy which would be going around, and you would have not this gigantic factories, but you would probably have a lot more individuals who were using solar panels on their house to mine themselves some energy coin. Now, the only problem with this is that you potentially have an issue where dirty energy is going to be a lot cheaper. So if you're burning coal in comparison to installing solar panels. So this is a little bit of a countermeasure which would happen potentially. I've mentioned this before, that Aircoin would potentially exist if you could have miners which were testing the air quality in the local area. If you had air coin working, and it was filtering out bad air quality in the local area as well. You had this dirty coal factory as well. You would have this rampant speculation of air coin in the local area. The factories probably would find that they should be really lowering emissions anyway, and probably they will be buying air coin themselves. And probably they would find that in the comparison of buying Aircoin to just lowering emissions anyway, they might as well have just started off with the solar panels in the first place, rather than trying to fight a marketplace of Aircoin, or trying to buy Aircoin itself because of the human value aspect of the air quality in comparison to the dirty energy that was being created. So you can see this market instant throwback in this scenario. Also, as an alternative from the very start, if you just rebranded Energy Coin to Clean Energy Coin, then you would have a very different marketplace which was going. You probably would need adjustments on the miners itself to investigate as to whether they were providing clean energy or not, and you would need some kind of independent distribution of this. Now, one of the major important things in the world of blockchain ledgers is independence, and working out whether people are doing work in a decentralized way. There is no collusion. I've mentioned about Collusion coin before, but I would imagine that there would be this, because you're creating ecosystems, there is a ginormous importance for finding independent, verified sources of information which was not tampered by any collusion by markets or monopolies. So I would imagine that there would be tons upon tons of new startup companies which were trying to work out collaborative measures to find out, seeking like good air quality, who is polluting in the local area. There would be so many different like open free market ways to create independence. And one of the best ways of doing it is finding a method in which no humans can tamper with it at all. It's just one of those direct consequences of what's happening. So one of the things that no humans can really crack at all is that giant password for the blockchain ledger. It just really requires that ASIC hash rates graphics card, and there is, other than improving your computing power, there isn't really much of a way around it. But in this environment, you could see a massive explosion of independent, verified survey sources which were always looking and checking upon the other person to make sure that there was no tampering with results for miners. So if you're thinking of any kind of new startup business, I would say independent measurement or survey statistician companies probably would be a ginormous thing in the future. So let's just go back into the realms of a few of the ideas that I come up beforehand. Remember that none of these ideas don't necessarily have to come about. There may just be a little tiny slice of an idea which can be reapplied, and there maybe there's a lot of it, but and maybe it's already been created as well. It doesn't really matter too much, but these are ideas to span on new ideas and potentially could change the world. So one of the mentions I've had before is an anti-monopoly coin. I've mentioned before an innovation coin as well, and I've mentioned a cooperative coin as well. That's not necessarily about everybody working together. I could think that can happen within inside a blockchain coin itself, but as to create not these structures where you have the CEO that has massive loads of money, but you have a distribution of wealth, which means that everybody is an owner within inside the company, from the ground level staff to the CEO. And you may even have a scenario where the original owner or founder of the actual company prefers to work on the floor and is just employing a general manager at the top, maybe even being paid less than that person itself. So it would be an interesting idea, and that does really combat the idea. If you're in a trade union party or a workers union, you definitely would be very, very interested in a cooperative coin. As long as you're not using any force to destroy the productive means of the company. Now, one of the last ones I would like to mention is debt coins. Now, this is another little theory that I've just been coming up with on the spot. It's not really brilliantly critically thinked over, and is probably definitely open to a lot of kickdowns very early on. But I would imagine that you could potentially launch a number of, say, debt instruments or debt coins which could be floated into the market. Now, these debt coins obviously have this situation of debt write-offs. So eventually, at some point, when this trust coin gets released, it can be leveraged out into the market. So, say, for example, if you released 100 coins into the market, you would expect that these coins would come back at some point in the future. It can be on an expansive level, so that you can always increase the market share and people can use this debt instrument in the future. The trust coin probably would be working in exchange with other coins itself. So, say Bitcoin, which would be for just tangible goods. I would imagine that trust coin would always be going down in a ratio level over time, and it will be interesting how that instrument would work. But I would imagine that trust coin would really need to be focusing upon productive improvements rather than speculative gain, and I think the miners of the trust coin itself would be looking and investigating hard into whether that company is using, say, collateral of something that was debt worthy in the first place. So if they use their house which was paid for with debts to buy this another house, then they would instantly work out that this is really not going to be a very viable method of providing trust coins to. So they would reject that kind of loan offer, and in comparison, they would be more looking forward to companies or people that were really trying to improve the quality or standards or productive means of society, and the miners would be all focused and working towards that goal. Also, you would have in the realms of trust coins is a debt exchange. So dependent on the quality of the debt, you would, or the coin debtor, so every single trust coin could be released into the market with different ratios of expansion and different ratios of, let's say, quality of the debtor. So you could have a highly speculative trust coin, and you could have a very trustworthy trust coin as well. And in that realm, you would have these debt exchanges which could occur between the two. I would imagine it's a very, very dangerous, complicated market in itself. But when the debt is going to be converted or transferred back over, it would need to go back into a solid instrument, say, for example, energy coin, or go back into a Bitcoin, which is for tangible asset allocated goods, or maybe even innovation coin, because innovations are rapidly outspanning the tangible goods, because the innovations are doing a lot more with less energy and less matter. Okay, so that would be very important. Obviously, one I've mentioned as well is that you probably leverage buyouts. It probably would be detecting this kind of method of finance as a little bit dangerous, and it really isn't improving the productive means of the company itself. So the trustworthy trust coin debt instruments would be rejecting leverage buyouts and would really be pushing for more improvements to the factory capacities. So this is very new thinking on this realm. I'm thinking of problems already while I go along with this, but I think there is definitely room for improvement here. I need to think a little bit over how the trust coin would go back into the market itself and how that would work, because I'm not quite thinking that over quite right at the moment. I'm just trying to think on the spot here. But essentially I'm just going to round that off now just with those ideas. with blockchains and financial markets, it is probably the most important thing, and the way that our money governs ourselves and how we focus our lives into good things, into a virtue system rather than a system of greed is good. We will improve humanity, and it will create an interesting outcome for our environment and humanity in the future. One little interesting note, and I remember this quote before in the past, is as we create this speculative system, rather than looking at sort of news articles which are coming from the government and stuff like that, the AI system is trying to be as human as possible to work out what the human wants, what the human needs, and is really the AI system is going to become an ultra human as a consequence of this. We're going to actually create a superhuman in comparison. And this is this really weird flipping of the switch which happens because as we use mobiles more, as we use Google Glasses, as we use computing power to improve the quality of the information that comes to us, we are becoming a little bit more computerized, and just to improve production means and stuff like that. And we essentially become a little bit more robotic as time progresses. It's obviously I'm ending on a little bit of a sour note here, but it's interesting how this little flip of artificial intelligence and humanity is turning over, but it potentially is this means in which we both combine together. And it's fairly interesting. If you want to read up on transhumanism, there is this idea of us being potentially uploaded onto a network itself. So I would imagine if there are speculative markets, the AI systems would be very interested in us to work out that as well. So that's just a little punt at the future at the very end there. I mean, obviously that's a bit scary even for my tolerance, but it's just interesting concepts to put your mind over and puzzle over. I would really enjoy and welcome any thoughts about any of the items that I've mentioned here. The trust coin definitely needs some work on there, so if you can add any comments or theories based upon that, I would very much appreciate it. And even if these are massively flawed, it definitely puts us into a new realm of thinking which may create some kind of benefit in the future. So, thank you very much for your time, and we shall speak again soon.